Hello and welcome to Performance Check. My name is Rob, and this is episode two of Critical Conversations, in which I speak to the best and brightest of the online role-playing game community. History has known many great minds who have contributed to the fantasy genre. People like Tolkien, Lewis, Pratchett, Gaiman, Rothfuss, Martin, the list goes on. Today, I have the pleasure. We're speaking with an individual whose contributions to the online role-playing game community are, in my mind, comparable to the titans of that particular genre. He is a quarter of Absolute Tabletop and is the creator of the hit online game series, The Provokers. I welcome Matt Click from aFistful of Dice to the conversation. Hey, Matt.
Hey Rob, how's it going, man? I I am very very humbled to have been included with the likes of Tolkien and Martin, but I appreciate that, man.
I wanted to overwhelm you at the beginning,
Yeah,
just
you're like,
get you on
I'm gonna
that.
set the expectations about here so that
Oh
Matt
no.
down here has to come up.
It's always a dream to live by, shall we say. Excellent. Well, I've only done this, as I was saying to you before we began, I've only done this once before, so let's just see how it goes.
Sounds
But I
good.
have, to let the viewers know, a number of questions that I will be asking Matt today, which will hopefully provide some kind of interesting insight into the mind of a player and a GM within role-playing games. So I'm going to ask a question that I've decided is going to be my first question for each one of these that I do. So, Matt, do you remember the first role-playing game world that you were involved with, whether that was playing in it or running it?
Yeah, so well, growing up, I always played games with my friends, playing pretend and playing with different action figures and stuff. And sometimes we would establish rules, like you can only pick so many characters from the action figure box, or you can only do one thing per your turn or whatever. And now looking back, I realized that that was like my first role playing game experience. But at the time, you don't really think of it that way. But my first like opening up a book, creating a character, role playing game experience was my dad and I played Star Wars RPG, the old West End Games Star Wars RPG, which was D6 based, and it was a dice pool, so you would roll a number of D6s based on how good you were at something. So, like Darth Vader rolled like 27 D6 with lightsaber skill. It is ridiculous. And
That's amazing.
yeah, and I loved that, just rolling all of those dice and playing in the Star Wars world. And I was 11 at the time, and I was just Star Wars was my world, and so it was really cool to be able to play in the Star Wars world. But it was one of those things where I didn't quite grasp what was going on. I was still very young, and I didn't quite understand that I couldn't do the things that Han Solo did in the Star Wars movies, because he was an upper echelon character, and I was kind of a lowly level 1 character. And so I'm trying to pull off these crazy things, and they're not really working as well as I would have hoped. So I got a little frustrated with it, but over time I got into like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, and I came to really fall in love with the failing forward concept, and how Han Solo has a lot of failing forward moments in
Absolutely,
Star
I was
Wars.
about
He's
to
not
say.
always making these crack shots and stuff all the time, and I came to really love that kind of the failure aspect of role playing games. And that's really weird, but that's really what drew me to it. Is like I can horribly botch this thing that I'm attempting to do, but it's only going to drive the story forward for me. So
That's actually really interesting, and I hadn't actually thought to ask you anything about that. But as you've mentioned it, is there a particular time when playing a role-playing game, either as a GM or a player, that you have failed that you most remember, or one that you think was the best?
one that really sticks out in my mind was I was playing. It was third edition Dungeons and Dragons, and I was playing with my family. Actually, it was so my dad and my sister were playing,
Yeah.
and I think back then you had the use rope skill. I'm not sure how
Yes.
familiar you are with third edition, but it
Very
was
familiar.
use rope. It was like my favorite, just the dumbest skill, and no one ever put points into it because it's a rope. I don't need to worry about it, but I had to make a use rope check to make a knot to try and climb down into this ravine, and I rolled really poorly on use rope and ended up falling like 100 feet and just dying just from from rolling
Just
use
the full
rope.
damage.
Yeah, but then I created a character after that whose whole goal was to try and get down to that ravine to recover this item that my past character had. So it was totally like it's my character's brother, and he's going to come and get my stuff for me. And I just remember that was just ridiculous, that use rope skill, man. I'll never forget that.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it had its uses for obviously very specific, and it failed you. It failed you in that regard.
It did fail me because I wasn't thinking, I'm 13 years old. I'm like, I'm not putting points into use rope. I'm putting points into cool stuff,
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. And at least it gave your next character some kind of motivation. So
yes, exactly.
That's amazing. So, I'm going to ask you a question that's actually occurred to me ever since I began watching your games online. God, it must be nearly 2 years ago now. And playing and watching role-playing games online, I found is an interesting, very new and interesting form of creative entertainment. I feel anyway. And also in terms of the people that are actually, playing the game, it becomes almost like an improvised performance. And what I think that sets your material apart from other games that you see online, if you take your Acquisitions Incorporated or your Critical Role, that kind of deal, is that they very much are kind of flippant, and they're kind of really focusing on sort of the comedy aspects of playing a game with a group of friends. Whereas I think what sets yours, which obviously yours does too, by the way, I will mention.
Yes, I was going to say, we have
really
plenty
boring,
of moments of
really
that.
Boring. No, of course not. What I'm saying, what makes yours even better is that emphasis on story when obviously you're DMing and your characters are playing. And I was wondering, ever since that you've brought your games online, and you've obviously have quite a following, and for good reason too. They're excellent games, and I've been a fan for a very long time. But what do you feel that your methods as a GM or as a player have changed from this advent of playing games online rather than around a table?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's like you said, it is sort of this new thing that's sort of just kind of blown up over the last couple of years, like with something like Acquisitions Incorporated. I think that was really the first example that we had of that, because they started out with the podcast, and it was Chris Perkins teaching the Penny Arcade guys how to play D&D.
Yes,
and it kind of it exploded from there, and it was, like you said, mostly because it was funny, it was entertaining, but it was also fun as someone who was in love with this game, to see people playing it and being able to have an experience that we had never had before, which was see how other people run games, see how other people play games. Because up until that point, it was limited to the tables that you had played at. And now it's like you can actually watch people play and run games online. And to me, that's been the biggest thing for me in like changing how I run a game, is I get ideas from people. I'll be watching someone running a game, and I'll see that they... just for an example, in the one-shot group, the Tabletop RPG one-shot group, there was a trend for a while where it was a narrative intro. So it was like, instead of describing your character at the beginning, like, when I'm playing this character, he kind of looks like this and he acts like this, the GM would allow each player, like, not a monologue, but basically like a little intro scene, and it didn't have to be connected to the adventure at all, but it was like a little narrative description of a character or something they were doing. Like if they're an assassin character, they could describe a scene that was like an earlier assassination or something like that. That was one example of like, and I started using that in the one shots that I was running, because it was a really easy way to introduce a character and have the character come to the table with some personality and things like that, but you didn't have to kind of shoehorn it in,
No, of course, yeah, no.
And then in terms of running the game differently because people are watching, that's something that is, it's weird. It's you kind of forget about it when you're running a game online, because at the end of the day, you're sitting with friends playing a game, and then you realize, there's 50 people watching, and
Yes.
when you try to picture that, you picture you and four friends sitting around a table, and then shortly away from the table, there's people in chairs just sitting there, just
Raised seating.
yeah, just sitting there watching you play, and that's a weird thing if you visualize it that way. But my philosophy is run the game like nobody's watching, but don't forget about the audience. I like engaging with people that are watching the game. Obviously not during the game, but it's fun during the breaks to look at the chat, see what people are talking about, see what people are saying, answer some questions. And we've done things in the past where a character will have some sort of grievous injury, and we'll ask someone to roll on the lingering injuries table for us, and we'll pull that from the chat and use that. So I think that there is kind of a line where it's, are you engaging with the audience a little bit too much? It's time to focus on the game. But I think that ultimately it's a great thing. It's really, really cool, and it's awesome to be sort of at the, not the dawn of it, but just sort of being involved in games being streamed online early on.
Absolutely, I agree.
I feel like the Provokers, one of the reasons why it's so big is because it kind of hit at this like really crucial time when people are like, okay, this is getting huge. The one-shot group was just starting up. People were running games online using Hangouts. I had run a very short campaign early on, and I think people were looking for something a little bit more long-term, a little bit more serious. And I think
absolutely.
that, I had enough subscribers at the time where it just it was like lightning in a bottle, where it was like, and that's not to say that, oh, it's not a good game or it's not good players, because I think it is a good game and I think it is good players, but I think it was just sort of like right place, right time sort of situation, and that it caught on the way it did.
No, absolutely. I think, that's absolutely and a fantastic thing too. And your comments on, addressing a community that's obviously watching the game, like you said, with the injury tables and ideas. The fact that a number of like-minded creative people are obviously watching this game at the same time, it is just another source of creativity that's flowing into your game. So absolutely, I 100% agree with that. Fantastic. We are, of course, when speaking about the Provokers, a very, very popular game that needs no introduction, really. It is set in the land of Aranoff. And I have always found Aranoff, ever since I started watching the Provokers, fascinating place. And I was wondering, first of all, how did Aranoff start? How did it begin? You mentioned you had some early campaigns, but what was the initial spark that set you on that particular journey?
Well, Aranoff is almost sort of like it's like an ad hoc setting where it was like I wanted to run some games, but I didn't have a setting that I was really using, and so I sort of just, I don't know, the name Aranoff has been around for a long time, and the world has been used in various different ways for, like, ever since I started playing D&D, like, close to 15 years ago or whatever. And it didn't actually come into being until I started running the Provokers game. And I decided that, okay, this is going to be set in my world of Aranoff, which is very hazy, vague. And then I start to realize that this other campaign that I ran is also in Aranoff, but it's in this other area. And all of these sort of disjointed ideas and things sort of came together into this campaign setting. And so it was really weird, because whenever I create a world, or whenever I do world building, I set out with a very purposeful idea. Like, this is going to be like sword and sorcery, like kind of savage, very dark fantasy sort of world, or this is going to be like high fantasy with Magitech stuff. But Aranoff was really like, it kind of grew as the Provokers was happening. I had vague ideas of where things were and what the different cultures were, but I would just throw something out there during a session. This comes from the elves of Haldrathine, and then afterwards I'm like, okay, what the hell is Haldrathine? Where are they, and why? What do they do? What's their deal? And I have to start thinking about that kind of thing, because I know it's going to come up again in the future. So it's been somewhat collaborative with the players, the Provokers. Asking them, where are you from? Let's talk about it. The city of Stone Rift, Tim and I collaborated like heavily on that, because I came to him with the idea of dwarves who use lightning. I was like, I think this is really cool. What do you think about this? And we kind of just shot some ideas back and forth. Similar with Shade Vale and talking with Nate and being like, hey, Nate, I have this idea for elves that use bone weapons. Let's talk about it. And just using those little simple kernels of like, I think this is really cool. And just sort of collaborating with someone on it to make it grow. And so Aranoff to me is like, it's whatever I need it to be, but it's also it was built because I needed it to be there. Does that make sense? Like, I'm like, I need a world,
does, yeah.
So I have to make a world, and it's going to kind of happen. And I'm still building it. There's still so many areas of Aranoff that I have no idea. You know, we did a world map finally of what Aranoff looks like in the different regions and stuff. Most of those places, I'm like, I have no idea. We'll get there when we get there, man. Like, I'll figure it out, you know?
Oh, that's excellent. I was going to ask about the map, actually. Hopefully I don't forget, because we have nicely led on to my next question. But I'm going to quickly ask you this while I remember, because you brought up an interesting point that now that you have the map of Aranoff, which is on sale now, is that correct?
Yeah, it's on AbsoluteTabletop.com. We have a poster size of it. I have one. I got the test proof copy. It's gorgeous. I was so happy with it. So definitely check that out.
It does look absolutely gorgeous, and do check it out if you haven't already. But yeah, my question regarding the map itself, then, I find when I DM, I find myself really hesitating when putting pen to paper on areas that haven't been explored, like you just say.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of doubt in your mind, or was there any kind of misgivings about putting all of Aranoff onto the map because of that reason, or are you happy to go with what you have there on the paper?
I think, I mean, I was super hesitant to do so, and I think that's kind of a running theme, like in world building, is like I'm so terrified to say this is it, you know, because what if I get another idea, or what if I don't end up liking this idea? And with Aranoff, it's like I think I worked with Nate on that map for probably close to 6 months. Because I talked to him about it, and it was one of those things where I was like, Nate, I want you to do the map of Aranoff, but I just need to figure out where everything is. And it took a long time for me to actually commit to, okay, this is all the regions. I figured it out. I'm not adding anything else. I'm happy with this. And I think that the thing that kind of convinced me was that just because I have a cool idea that I can't use now doesn't mean that I won't be able to use it later. Like, there's no such thing as wasted creativity. You know what I mean? Like, I could spend years writing half of a novel, and even if it doesn't turn into a full novel, it's not like I wasted all of that time. Those ideas, those characters, those, you know, all of that can be used elsewhere. And so if I come up with a cool idea for Aranoff, if there's not some way for me to include it in there, I can use it elsewhere, or I can twist it a little bit and make it work for Aranoff. And so for me, it was just sort of a, okay, I gotta commit. I have to nail it down and decide what Aranoff looks like right now in the present, you know, campaign, and roll with it. And I'm happy that I did. It's like, once I have the finished map, I'm not looking at it like, I wish I would have done this differently, or I wish I would have added this, or I wish I wouldn't have added that. Like, I'm happy with it. And I think that's something that I would advise to world builders, is like, once you decide, or once you nail it, once you punch it in, you'll be happy with it. I promise you. But also don't be afraid to change it up. You know, if I ever wanted to do something different with Aranoff, I'd be like, okay, it's 200 years after the Provokers, and this region doesn't exist anymore. This region took over this region, and, you know, this country is completely gone now. And, you know, it's like, they do that all the time with published campaign settings. Faerun is like, every 10 years they're like, Faerun blows up. It's totally different now. Everything's gone.
Or you could just say whoever did the map originally was horribly drunk. And
yeah, exactly. It's unreliable narrator. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's always that to help you out as well.
Absolutely.
But bring us back to what you were mentioning earlier about Aranoff and the particular campaigns or the ideas that you feel you want to run in Aranoff. I was actually wondering, what makes an Aranoff campaign an Aranoff campaign? So what feels right in that world and what feels wrong? I mean, you were saying about you having particular settings for particular types of for games like dark fantasy, that kind of thing.
Right.
Is there anything that would be wrong other than the obvious, like, I don't know, spaceships, or I don't know, cyberpunk, you know?
Right. Yeah, Aranoff at its core is, I mean, and I'm going to use this phrase, and I don't mean it negatively, but it's sort of generic fantasy. And the way that I say generic fantasy, it's sort of, it has a lot of the same sort of tropes and feels of a traditional fantasy world, and that's not a bad thing. That's the thing I want to get across is, like, just because there's not anything completely shocking or new in Aranoff, I feel like what I do with Aranoff is I take those tropes and I just do something a little bit different with them, like the dwarves living in the mountains and having a stronghold in the mountains. Okay, well, yes, they do, but technically it's in a canyon, and also they have lightning. They have electricity and things like that. And so I think that Aranoff is good if you're wanting to run, like, just good, solid fantasy with, like, in an ancient world. That's the thing with Aranoff, is that it's very, very old. There's thousands of years of history, which, of course, I have it all written down. No, I don't. Of course. I don't at all. But I love the idea that there have been many, many civilizations that have risen and fallen in Aranoff, and it's very tied to these sort of cataclysms that happen to these civilizations, and sort of, the world is just upheaved, and, and then the new age begins, things like that. So I think that I'm still sort of playing around with ideas with Aranoff, but I feel very comfortable there. I feel like this is a setting I know how to run. This is the fantasy that I've been running forever. This is the fantasy that I grew up reading, and it's just cool things that I've taken from Middle-earth, from Faerun, from all of these fantasy novels and movies that I used to watch as a kid. It's just everything that I think is cool is in Aranoff.
Absolutely, and I think everything that a lot of people think is cool is in Aranoff. Seriously. Oh man, I'm trying not to fanboy here, man. Like, I'm holding it back. It's just going to be a wave in a second. The laptop will go up, I'll fall over, it'll all be very embarrassing, and it is all recorded onto the internet for everyone to see.
That's right, man.
I have, this is a little bit of a fanboy question, so you're going to have to forgive me. But I thought of it today, and I was like, why did that take me so long to think of? And, hopefully I'm not putting on the spot too much with this one, but if you had to run the Provokers in a different setting and system, what would you choose and why?
Okay. So, I think, you could do the Provokers in really any sort of. I could see it working in Faerun. I could see it working in Greyhawk. I could see Provokers in Eberron would be really cool, because then you have, like, kind of the magic tech, the trains and things like that going on. I think it'd be interesting to see the Provokers in one of the other AbTab settings, like Dragon Grin or NKO would be really cool as well.
That would be amazing.
Because the thing about the Provokers too is that it's not, the setting is not super crucial to that. I feel like the crux of that campaign is really the characters, the players, and sort of just the relationship between the different characters and the struggles that they had to overcome and things like that. But in terms of system, man, that's a tough one, because I'm such a just diehard, just like D&D is.
Me too, man.
It's like my bread and butter, man. But I'm really in love recently with Fate. I really like Fate a lot.
Oh yeah.
Fate is an interesting system for me to run, because it's the story elements and the mechanics are, like, tied together. Like, you don't ask the game master, is there cover? You tell the game master, I would like to create the aspect cover. I'm taking cover, and that's sort of, that to me is like, it's almost like, here's the process of RPGs, and we're just gonna flip it around, and it's the same process, but it's just, I don't know, it's sort of an interesting thing where it's, the collaboration is built into the mechanics. I think running a fantasy game with Fate would be really, really interesting to me, just because Fate is the system I turn to when I'm like, I want to run a Mad Max one shot, or I want to run like a World War II with zombies one shot, or something like that. But having an actual like fantasy campaign with Fate would be really interesting, and I would love to see that.
Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, that sounds incredible, and I think you've chosen wisely there. I think because obviously, the players in the Provokers are all incredibly collaborative in the way that they uh, aid telling the story. So I think using a particular game that rewards that narrative kind of support to the person running the game, I think is, like I say, a very wise choice indeed. That's
Absolutely.
excellent.
Well, and it's one of those things too where it's like there are moments in the Provokers campaign where we're doing things that you would do in Fate. Like I'm just going to go, like one of the players would be like, I'm just going to go ahead and describe this and just make this real in the world. Like I'm going to, grab a bottle and break it over someone's head, even though I didn't say, oh, there's a bottle on the table, and that's the kind of like player agency that Fate really promotes, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something else that I was wondering about Provokers because with obviously it being that sweeping epic storyline, I was wondering if this was essentially, I imagine it almost like it was a TV series or something. Would you say that there are any deleted scenes from the Provokers? For
Oh,
example, were there any ideas that you wanted to put into that game that didn't quite make it for whatever reason, or is it anything that you wished you'd elaborated on or not? Or
oh man, yeah. There's quite a bit. I had a That's a really good question. I had one idea that I was gonna do where the Provokers went to one of the other towns. I think it was gonna be Hummock. I think it was Hummock. One of the other towns in that area that they didn't go to. I was gonna have them go there, and the town was gonna be like super fortified, and the Provokers are going to be like, whoa, this is like, there's a wall, there's like people manning the walls, what's happening here? And they find out that Kaldor, the half-orc from session 1 that they fought in the tavern, he had sort of like found his way to this town and had sort of risen to the role of hero in this town, and was sort of leading these people and had protected the town against the Gavalt Raiders and the orcs and stuff. And so it was going to be one of those things where the Provokers see Kaldor and they're like, "Oh, Kaldor, what the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "No, stop! I'm like, I'm good now. Like, I'm helping these people. I've found my place. Like, I feel like a hero. I'm not a fake hero anymore. I'm actually helping these people." And I don't know why I that didn't make it in, because it got to the point in the campaign where I felt like anything else would be padding. Like, it was like,
Right.
okay, we're getting to the logical conclusion of the campaign, and so it's time to wrap it up. But I will say that that's another instance where, hey, that's a cool idea. There's no reason why I can't do something like that
Of
later on,
course.
So, but yeah, that's something that I wanted to do that I didn't end up doing.
That's amazing. I love that. And I think that's a credit to you, man, because um, one thing that I always adore about any role-playing game, in fact, but we'll say, obviously, this example is D&D, that you can have such amazing character development in these games. And the fact that that particular character, I believe he was boasting about slaying a dragon, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah,
And for him to actually rise and actually to take a look at himself because of the actions of the players, that it's changed the fabric of the world itself.
yeah,
Um,
exactly, yeah. And I
I,
love things like that, and I love callbacks and bringing in characters that you haven't seen in a long time, or um, I love that kind of thing. That's my favorite thing in like a TV show, is when you have those callbacks or those things that resurface later on, that you weren't thinking you were going to see again. And so, yeah.
oh man, incredible. I really like that answer.
That was a good question.
Well, there we go. I have actually asked. I asked this question to the tabletop terrors kids,
Yes.
and I feel that I kind of like to hear your sort of opinion on this, as you all now work together at Absolute Tabletop.
Yeah.
Check it out. Seriously. So have deadlines and managing a creative process as you do with Absolute Tabletop, has it changed how you run games, both and create games both professionally and for your home games?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I've never had deadlines, even self-imposed deadlines for things like RPGs. I mean, obviously there's like, okay, I need to prep by this date, or I'm not going to have a game prepped for tonight or whatever. But I think that it's really sort of it's boiled RPGs down to like the necessities for me, where it's like this is what's crucial in a supplement, in a module, in just my notes for prep. What are the like primordial sort of things that I need, if nothing else? And it's given me a lot of foundation to build off of. Writing my first RPG supplement was absolutely terrifying because I didn't know what to include. I didn't know how to structure it. I didn't know how to organize it. I didn't know how much to write or how little to write. I didn't know what to focus on. And so it's been a huge learning process in doing that and figuring out what people actually want and what people like to have. And what I found is that people like bits and pieces. And that's sort of refreshing to me because that's what I like too. I will very rarely pick up an adventure module or a campaign setting and be like, I'm going to use this exactly as it is in the book. No, I'm going to take this stat block, this item, this town, and I'm going to put it into something else, or I'm going to mishmash it together, I'm going to change it, I'm going to skew it one way or the other. And that to me has really colored my perception of how people use publications like that, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that's how I use them. I guess everybody uses them that way, And and that is really cool to be able to write something knowing that I'm writing this from the perspective of somebody that's going to flip through this and find cool stuff and use whatever they want, but not necessarily use it just as it is in the book. And that's sort of helped my prep in the way that I do my notes, in the way that I structure sessions, of just like, I'm just going to come up with some cool stuff that's going to happen, and we're going to fill in the blanks together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do actually have a question that leads on from that.
Yeah.
I'm quite familiar with your work at Absolute Tabletop. A big fan here, and I'm sure lots of people watching this are also big fans. Do you have a particular favorite supplement that you've done?
Yeah, this is gonna be weird, but my favorite supplement is Brook, and that's sort of odd because that's the that's the worst selling supplement in Aranoff. I mean, because the Wayward Wanderer was the first supplement, and it was a big deal when it came out, and it was like, oh, it's Aranoff, and it's this really kind of sort of iconic location from the Provokers campaign. And then, the Convocation is obviously really cool because it's got dudes on griffins with floating islands on the cover. So even if you aren't into Aranoff or the Provokers or anything, you'll be like, hey, that looks kind of cool. And I'm going to pick that up because I want to ride on a griffin. But Brook is my favorite just because, I don't know, I love that supplement just in that it's a little farming village, and I wrote so much about it. I had to come up with so many different things, like the different families that lived there, the different last names, and how, when you come of age, you go to the naming stone, or when you're expecting a child, you go to the naming stone and you pick out a name for your kid, because they keep using these names over and over and over again to try and hold on to this culture that they created for themselves in founding this little village. And the temple, and I love the maps. Barker did these just gorgeous maps in Campaign Cartographer that I just love those maps, and the art is really great too. And for me, that was the most satisfying supplement to write, because it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to write. I don't know. I shouldn't have committed to Brook. I don't know what this is going to be about. It's just a farming town that got nuked by barbarians. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then I just started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And eventually I just sort of realized how much fun I was having writing it, because it was, I don't know, it's just, I sort of fell in love with this little village. And then it was so heartbreaking because I was falling in love with the village as I was creating it, knowing that it had already been destroyed. Like, this has
Oh,
already been destroyed in the Provokers campaign,
yeah.
but I'm retroactively creating it and coming up with all this stuff for it. So it was just a really rewarding experience for me, and I really love that supplement. So yeah,
No, absolutely, and I think it's very important, and this is advice that I'm sure that viewers listening to you now would take away is the fact that really in on, even if it is just a small village, just that level of just taking care of a particular idea and working with it and not giving up on it,
yeah,
then you'll find all these wonderful gems that you can use for your games. Um,
absolutely, yeah,
that's fantastic. Um, so we're gonna move away from the provokers just for a little bit
absolutely.
because we're going to discuss some recent events. Something called Harbinger popped up on my YouTube feed not so long ago,
Yeah,
and I watched. I believe it was a damage reduction from
yeah,
tabletop
damage
players.
reduction. Yeah,
And for those who haven't seen that video, although I find it highly unlikely, given the community that obviously watch my videos, um, can you tell me, tell whoever's watching, if they don't know what it is, what Harbinger is, first of all?
yeah, absolutely. I will always talk about Harbinger because it's gonna be a labor of love.
Yeah.
So Harbinger was an idea that I had. It's been an idea that I've been toying with for a long time, but it came to fruition when Wizards of the Coast announced the OGL, the Open Gaming License for 5th edition, which if if Absolute Tabletop had a headquarters, we would have had a party when that happened, because it was like we were effectively creating content for 5th edition without saying that it was for 5th edition. But now it was like we can advertise that it's for 5th edition. We can put it out there and be like, hey, if you like Dungeons and Dragons, this works perfectly with the 5th edition. And we actually have a legal like page that we put in all of our supplements that says here's why we're allowed to do this and support it and sell it to you guys. And so it was one of those things where it was like, guys, we can actually do this. We can do it now. And I had the idea of, this means that you can use the framework of 5th edition to do whatever you want. The basic rules are there. The mechanics are there. The roles, the stats, the advantage, disadvantage system, it's all there. We should do something completely different with it. We should take it and do science fiction. And everyone was like, oh yeah, we can do that. I'm saying this like they were like poo-pooing the idea. They weren't. They were not poo-pooing the idea. But it was at a time when we were just so damn busy all the time. And I was like, guys, let's make a sci-fi system from scratch. And they were like, yeah, no, let's not do that. But I sort of typed up some really basic notes, and James has been really involved in it as well. He and I we're sort of piggybacking off of each other with the initial concept of the setting and coming up with some of the mechanics ideas and stuff. But to answer your question that you asked 5 minutes ago, the gist of it is that it's a sci-fi fantasy setting that uses the 5th edition as a framework. And it's sort of like a dark sci-fi fantasy, sort of like a Warhammer 40K, with a little bit of like Star Wars and Dune throw in there. There's kind of some feudal lords in space sort of thing going on there. And the basic idea is that there's all these feudal lords that populate these moons surrounding this planet. They've lost the secrets of faster than light travel. They're not really sure how their ships work, how any of their technology works. They just sort of are able to retrofit it. And this alien ship comes into orbit. It's a derelict alien ship. It's been empty for centuries. And it sparks a war between all of these houses in space. And the ship is called the Harbinger, and that's why we're calling it Harbinger. And so the basic idea is that it's a war over alien technology with space knights.
And I adore the idea as well. That what I particularly love about it is that with obviously a lot of sci-fi games, like you mentioned with 40K, and you look to other things like video games and Mass Effect, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
You have presented, obviously, you have space. It's a pretty big place. But what I love that sparks off this particular idea for the role-playing game that you've had is that it is predicated on one event happening, the arrival of that ship. And I think because it is so focused on that central idea, it instantly made me so excited to
Yeah.
see this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be incredible. And that
And
does lead on. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we have a code word for something like this in Absolute Tabletop. We call it a Phase 8 idea, which means that it
Oh,
is so far down the line that we're not like tangibly doing anything with it, but it's getting closer and closer, and we've put it out there because we're confident in the fact that like this is going to happen someday. But we, up until this point, we've been creating small books. Well, small. Copper Jackals was
I was
150
going to say.
pages. God help me. But big in that it's an actual. We want it to be a hardcover campaign book that you can buy. That's going to be filled with cool art. That's going to be play tested to death, so that it's like we know that it's the best that it can be. And I'm really excited about that, man. I'm actually working on classes for it right now, and I think that sooner rather than later we'll see a very rudimentary playtest document out there for people to check out and try.
That's absolutely incredible news. I'm like, thank you so much. No, it was just such a good idea, and I was bleary eyed. I'd just woken up. I was like, oh, what's going on in the world?
Yeah.
Oh my god. So this leads me on to my next question. You give wonderful answers that just cycle back on themselves, man. You're perfect. Perfect, I
Thank
tell
you.
you.
I appreciate that.
You can put that in your pocket to keep. Um, I don't even know what that means.
I'm doing it though. I'm gonna put it in my pocket. I'm gonna hold on to it for the rest of my life.
Good. We'll put it in the wash. I'm going to try and carry on. So, with Harbinger, as a creative individual, as creative as you are, Maclick, you must have thought of potentially what kind of stories you could tell in Harbinger.
Yeah. Do you want
Go
a
on.
story? The sorts of things that immediately that I think of are actually going to Harbinger, and I like the idea that the Harbinger is like a super dungeon. Like it's like city sized, and I think James mentioned this in the damage reduction video, but he like the idea that sort of each house almost has like a base camp on Harbinger. So it's like there's different like areas of Harbinger that are controlled by different factions and things like that. And so the idea that like you're basically delving into this dungeon that is just full of unknown things, and we have some ideas for like what sorts of monsters and things are going to be in Harbinger, because we're moving away from aliens. We don't want the aliens to be on the Harbinger.
Okay.
We want it to be very centric on humanity, and so coming up with ideas for what sorts of enemies will be aboard the Harbinger, aside from enemy factions and things like that. But I love the idea of like a small group of scavengers or something having to go to the Harbinger to get like one thing off of the Harbinger. And there's like a battle going on between two of the big houses, and they happen to show up right when this battle is just reaching its peak. And so they're having to sort of navigate this massive starship, and then they're having to like avoid the different houses, and maybe they get involved in a battle. They're in the middle of this huge battle, and they have to kind of like navigate their way through this battlefield on this, in a giant hangar or something like that. I just think that would be really cool. And I love the idea of creating your own house. That's one of the things in the Game of Thrones RPG that is so good, are the house creation rules.
Oh my god,
and
yes.
I would love to have something like that where you can create your own sept. The houses are called septs. Create your own sept and kind of like role play like people from that sept. I think that would be really, really neat. So yeah, I've just so many ideas, and it's almost too much. Where we have this dock of ideas, and it's like we got to start paring this down eventually. Like we got to get the fat off of these bones here.
I'm not expecting an answer for this question, because this is material that you're obviously probably yet to write, or if you have written, you probably won't give away. But just as someone who enjoys your work, I am incredibly intrigued as to what happened to the house that got wiped off.
That got wiped out. So that's a relatively new idea that I think Barker pitched during damage reduction, and it was one of those things where we hadn't talked about that at all. But I loved the idea because I went into it thinking there are 12 houses. There's going to be 12 moons. There's going to be 12 houses. And then Barker said, what if there used to be 12 houses? I was like, I love that. Because then you have the option of being from that house, you know, and a character without a home, a character who is effectively a Ronin, a wandering samurai. You know, I used to be sworn to this house, but now I don't know where to go or what to do. I absolutely love that idea. And so we really haven't nailed down the specifics of what that house is called or what they were like. But I love the idea that they were almost like the Starks of this world, and that they were like the only like kind of good, honest people, and they just get wiped out. Yeah, just like in Game of Thrones, where there's this void in the north left where the Starks used to be. You know what I mean? And it's like, who's gonna fill that void? Where are the honest, loyal people in this world? Where did they go? And it's like they are scattered to the four winds. They're everywhere. But if you look hard enough, you can find them.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to say it twice.
Thank you. I need to write it down. I just came up with that.
Oh, do it, man. I will. Yeah, by all means. I mean, I can fill time if needs be.
You're good.
Okay. But dude, that's gorgeous. So, let's talk a little. We're talking about the future. Oh, one last thing about Harbinger. Yeah. Love that there's melee still. Loving the energy swords.
Yes.
Just love it. That's what I wanted to say.
I love the idea of melee weapons in space, and so many sci-fi franchises have done it right. I love that in Dune, there's the idea that like the personal shields can block projectiles, but they can't block melee weapons. I'm like, that's just such an elegant way to make it so that you're in space, but dudes are carrying swords. Like that's
very smart.
Perfect. So I've always loved melee weapons in space. That's just because I grew up with lightsabers. So
lightsabers. Everything that I do just comes back to lightsabers, and I mean everything.
Yep, so, absolutely everything in my life. Yep.
But yeah, we're talking about sci-fi. We are going to look to the future now. So first of all, as I understand it, Absolute Tabletop are working very hard on a number of projects, as you've said. I believe Stone Rift is on its way.
Yes, yeah, Stone Rift is really coming along. It's tough to get back into the swing of writing because we have been working on print on demand for what seems like years. I know it's only been a few months, but we've been working so hard on trying to nail down exactly what we need to do to make the books as nice as possible. And I actually have sitting over here like one of our proofs for the Aranoff book, and we get it, and it looks gorgeous, but we open it up, and we're like, why is there a little bit of white on the edge of the page? Why is that there? And that's going to be 3 weeks of us trying to figure out why there's white on the edge of the page, you know what I mean? And so it's just been lots of back and forth, but
I wouldn't even know where to begin. Oh
that's the thing, man, is like our issue was that when we started laying things out, when we started designing these books and the art and the page elements, we weren't thinking, how is this going to look on the printed page? We were thinking, how is this going to look on somebody's computer screen?
Exactly.
And then you get to working with printed books, and you find out about something called ink density, which I was completely unaware of.
What?
But ink density is when you have too much saturated color on the page so the ink doesn't dry.
Oh.
And our layouts are saturated as hell. Just so much color and ink. And so we've had to figure out how to do that. How do we take every single piece of art and every single page element that we've ever put on the page and make it so that it's not running off the page when they print it, And so...
Oh my God.
That has been huge. So getting back into the swing of writing, it's like my brain was toggled one way, and I'm like, pushing the toggle back the other way towards writing again, and it's been really hard. But I'm really excited for Stone Rift. It's gonna be a little bit different than the other Aranoff supplements, I'm looking at things like Keep on the Borderlands as inspiration. Keep on the Borderlands is a perfect module in my eyes because it doesn't say go here, go here, go here, do
Yeah.
A, do B, do C. It says if your players go here, here's a roll table of like 100 things that could happen when they get here, or like,
Oh
hey,
wow.
here's the market. Here's a roll table of a bunch of stuff that they could get at the market, and I love that because it's almost like a sandbox, and I want Stone Rift to be sandboxy. I want there to be different things that the players can do. I want there to be different tools that the GM can utilize to run sessions in Stone Rift. So
Oh wow. I'm very excited about that, as I'm sure many people are. I'm looking forward to seeing that once again, as you were saying with Brooke before, you zooming in on a particular location. It's going to be
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Um, so, also in the future, I absolutely understand and respect you. Probably won't want to talk about this an awful lot, but the fanboy in me once again is clawing at my ribcage. Um, Provokers 2.
Yeah.
Is there anything other than what you've said before that you'd like to tell our beautiful, wonderful viewers?
I would love to, man. There's no reason to be secretive about it. So Provokers 2 is happening. It's going to be happening in the fall. I think we're going to try and kick it off in September or October, barring, player schedules. So it's been absolutely wonderful to take the summer off to distance myself a little bit from it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I cannot stop thinking about it, and I cannot stop writing ideas down. I have my little idea notebook. It's filled with Provokers. It's filled with Provokers 2. And so it's going to be set 20 years after the end of the first Provokers campaign, and the Provokers themselves are sort of like legends. They're still alive. The thing is that all of the Provokers they're long-lived races. 20 years to a dwarf is like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But it's long enough for the landscape of Aranoff to have shifted drastically in the wake of this thing that has happened.
Mm.
And so it's going to be set 20 years after. It's going to be totally new characters.
Oh.
Some of the characters that the guys have talked to me about are really, really interesting. They're looking at characters that are connected to the party, not necessarily like, oh, it's Barker's playing Holly, Dice's daughter, or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like different things. It's like people that have been affected by the Provokers, and so they're going to be playing new characters, but we're going to see the Provokers as well, the original Provokers, and we're going to be doing one shots, one-on-one games with each of the Provokers about what they have been doing in the last 20 years and what sorts of things they've been doing. And that's going to be really cool. We're going to see Dice, what he's up to. We're going to see Erdon, what he's been up to. Durgan, I've already been talking with Tim about what Durgan's one-on-one session is going to be, and I'm so excited about it. And I think it's
That's
going to
gonna be
answer a lot of
amazing.
questions about the Corruptor and what his whole motivation is, because Durgan is sort of like obsessed with finding this thing out. And yeah, I'm just really excited about it. And I will say that it's going to be a lot more focused in. They're still going to have its epic moments, but I'm sort of in love with like character-driven story, and so it's going to be a lot, like I said, a lot more focused in, a lot more zeroed in on these characters and their struggles, but still with plenty of grand sweeping, sort of moments, but less of a war, if that makes sense. Like, it's not going to be, oh, we got to get to this place before this army gets here. It's going to be smaller, isolated sort of pockets of struggle and conflict.
Yeah, not a second Death Star.
Exactly. We're
Not that
not
I have a
doing
problem
Return of
with
the
that.
Jedi. We're doing Empire.
Oh yeah, that's exactly the kind of tour that I want to hear, man. Oh my goodness me, that is so exciting. I have one final question, really, and it is Provokers related. Um, there was a moment in Provokers where a particular, I don't know, British person made a cameo by the name of wrote DM, but
Yeah.
but she died, right? So
Yes.
she died. So I was wondering if, I don't know, if you wanted to, I don't know, have a running theme of British cameos being killed, horribly murdered in some way. I just want to let you know that I'm right here.
You're tossing your hat in the ring to be
I'm just
brutally murdered in a Provokers
just
campaign.
just horribly murdered. Like I want a bit of time, but then just unleash hell and you know.
I I absolutely love that idea, and we will definitely talk about that, because that is I really enjoyed having Jenny on
She was great.
it was really interesting. It was, I wasn't sure how that was going to play out, because it's like,
Mm,
I'm running the game, and technically you're an NPC, but you're
yeah.
portraying an NPC, but you're not the GM, and so it's like, okay, is she gonna say anything that's gonna completely like derail my plans? But
Yeah, absolutely.
she did awesome. I gave her the barest of details beforehand, and she just did great. So I'm definitely open to having more sort of cameo appearances, and I think it's a just a cool way to keep the campaign fresh, and also honestly take a little bit of weight off of my shoulders,
Oh,
and
of
that, okay,
course, I
now
can
this
imagine.
person's going to portray this character. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Fantastic. Well, look, I mean, this has been absolutely amazing, Matt. I just want to take a moment to say thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with me here today. And also, thank you personally, because I can say without a shadow of a doubt, if it wasn't for your YouTube channel, A Fistful of Dice, go and subscribe if for some reason you haven't already. If it isn't for that YouTube channel, Performance Check does not exist. So thank you very much for that, man.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate that, man. And I mean, thank you for having me on, and sort of promoting this sort of community discussion, and talking to each other and appearing in each other's videos and things like that. The community used to do that a lot more. And
Mm.
it's cool to have that sort of feeling of synergy again. So thank you for having me on, man. It's been an absolutely delightful conversation.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much. Now, one last thing I do need to say, and I think it is important for you to use this as a moment to plug whatever it is that you would like the people watching to know about either your channel, Absolute Tabletop, go.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess what I'll say is, Absolute Tabletop is like, we're back up and swinging. Right now, there's a sale on all Aranoff stuff. We just are just taking a huge percentage off of all the Aranoff products. Some of the supplements are like 50% off right now. So if you're interested in getting into Aranoff or checking out any of that stuff, you can go check it out. The t-shirts and the map are on sale as well. Um, and then this coming week, I think we're going to have some announcements about Dragon Grin, and we're also going to try and have a Dragon Grin sale as well. Dragon Grin is the setting of Tabletop Terrors, Tim and James. One of my favorite settings. I absolutely love Dragon Grin. So keep an eye out on AbsoluteTabletop.com. We're going to be sending out newsletters whenever we're coming out with stuff, and print on demand is going to be happening very soon. We're shooting for we're shooting for July 29th for the Convocation print on demand.
Oh,
The
wow.
newsletter said July 39th,
Oh,
which
yes, I saw that.
everybody honed in on that, and it was like, really? That's the one thing you're going to talk about
Made
is
up a
July
date.
39th?
Oh, guys.
That was a typo on my part, because originally we said July 30th and I changed it to July 29th, but it's July
It
39th at
happens.
6:76 p.m. You're going to be able to get the convocation. No, the convocation print on demand is going to be available very, very soon, and then shortly after that is Copper Jackals, and then shortly after that is Be a Better Campaign Master. So the books are going to start shipping very soon. We're very excited.
It is a very exciting time. And is there anything that you're going to be in very soon? Any kind of games, plays as well, man. But if if you're getting that on as well, that's great.
No, I'm not appearing in any theater productions, but it's kind of strange. I actually don't have anything on the calendar right now in terms of games. But I'm sure that we're going to be doing some more Sir Celine and some more Crux, the Dragon Grin campaign that I'm playing in, that is absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love the first session. And again, Provokers is going to be kicking off in September, October. And as soon as we know when the dates are for the Provokers and for those one-on-one sessions that I was talking about, I will absolutely just advertise the crap out of it on, various groups and the Fistful of Dice Facebook page and all of that. So
That's absolutely amazing. And who knows, perhaps I think it is Ephraim, your character in Dragon Grin,
yes, yes.
may one day run into my Dragon Grin
Oh
character.
man,
Hey.
yeah, that would be crazy. I absolutely loved that session. By the way, you killed it. You killed it,
Oh,
man.
thank you very much, man. A total newbie, so I have all the others who were in that game to thank for that. But you're very kind to
Oh,
say.
it was not evident that you were a newbie at all. So yeah.
That's really nice of you to say, man. So, now I've gone red. No, I haven't. Honestly, it's just a lighting. So we are now at the end of Critical Conversations. If you who are watching can think of anyone who should be my next guest, do let me know in the comments. If you've liked the video, perhaps give it a like. If you would like to see more of this kind of thing, then hit subscribe. Or not, we're all friends here. Or are we? Matt, give us your sign off.
I'm Matt from A Fistful of Dice, and this has been Critical Conversations. Thank you again, Rob.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I hope that all of your performances for you at home are up to standard. Can't stop it!